Hola, bienvenidos.
Hello, welcome. My name is Adela Modera, tourism specialist for the Inter-American Development Bank. It's a pleasure to be here with you to talk about technology applied to tourism as part of the framework of future tourism driven by the IDB and Segitur. This session will be held in Spanish, but we have simultaneous interpretation services available in English. To select the service, just go to the bottom right-hand side of your Zoom screen and click on the globe icon and select the language of your preference. During the Q&A, you will be able to submit your questions through the chat in both English and Spanish.
Inter-American Development Bank, IDB. It is a real pleasure to be here today to talk about technology applied to tourism within the framework of the Future Tourism Program promoted by the IDB and financed by the Spanish General Cooperation Fund at the bank. This session will be in Spanish, but simultaneous interpretation in English is available. To change languages, please select the world icon located at the bottom of the screen. In addition, you will be able to ask questions through the chat channel, both in English and Spanish, once we open the round of questions. Esta sesión es la primera de dos sesiones. Hoy hablaremos del uso estratégico de la
This is the
tecnología.
first of two sessions. We will be discussing the strategic use of technologies for different phases of the tourism traveling experience. And these two webinars are part of the future tourism framework carried out by the IDB. This is something that stems from the COVID-19 pandemic, and notwithstanding the fact that we have seen some improvements in the sector, we have still a lot of work to do in different destinations and different countries. Now, we also have generalized inflation and other problems that affect the tourism industry. In addition to this, we have other previous challenges that existed in the Americas and Caribbean region related to the competitiveness of small and medium-sized tourism businesses and garnering more attraction from tourists that are part of the more marginalized sectors in society. We've had very low levels of coordination between public and private agencies in these communities. So the use of technology is absolutely foundational for us to be able to make improvements. It's important for us to use technology strategically. And with that in mind, we have two main goals. First, accelerate the transfer to the use of technologies to overcome sector challenges. And secondly, stimulate better online coordination between the tourism agencies and technology development. We need to not only upgrade our technology use and disseminate knowledge, and that's what we are seeking to do with these two webinars. We are looking for partners with the best knowledge of technology related to tourism, which includes Segitur, a Spanish company, and they have expansive experience in tourism and can talk to us about the best experiences generated by digital technologies. You'll be able to find the IDB or the program on the IDB website. Now I will yield the floor to Victor Badarrey, the Director of Relations for Segitur. Thank you for joining us today, and I hope that this session is very useful to you. Victor, go ahead. Thank you. Well, thank you for the trust that you've placed in Segitur for these strategic tourism developments. I'd like to give you some recommendations related to the logistics of the webinar. We ask everybody to mute your microphones, and at the end of the webinar, we will try to see if we can set aside some time for Q&A. You can submit your questions through the chat room, which you will find on the bottom of your Zoom screen. And based on the amount of time that we have available, we'll try our best to answer any and all questions possible. This session will be recorded and subsequently will be uploaded to the bank's website, IDB, under the heading of Future Tourism. And you could find it in the sectors page and sustainable development page. Thank you to everybody who are joining us today. For us, it's a real pleasure to be able to take part in these knowledge sessions. This is the first of two sessions, as Adela stated, for the that we've put together for the IDB. The idea is to have these two webinars that are geared towards identifying the trends that we're looking at in the tourism sector and what we've seen from Segitur. This is the first of two webinars, as Adela stated. We're trying to improve our performance through the use of technologies. And so we're trying to keep the tourist at the forefront of everything that we do. And the idea would be to improve the tourism experience from various aspects and facets. And we're going to look at some of the technology solutions that we have discovered are the most convenient for us to be able to achieve our means. And these are experiences that we've had, not so much experiments, and we've been very successful with some of these programs when dealing with tourists in Spain. As Adela mentioned, the next session will be on Thursday at the same time, and we'll be talking about driving sustainability. It's another webinar related to technology, but more focused on sustainability. And the idea would be to focus on how to apply technology to improve our performance in all facets of the tourism journey. And for this purpose, we have different specialists that will be talking to us. Each one will be assigned 20 minutes so that you can understand more or less what the format will be for the webinar. Additionally, these are Spanish companies that have already undertaken these developments in Spain and done so very effectively. We're going to start with the first one. The first component is prior to the trip. There are a number of mechanisms that are put into play prior to any travel. And we're going to try and look at all of these technologies and all of these circumstances and see how we can put them together. We're going to talk about the prior to travel phase. And we have Juan Gomez. He's the Chief of Market Intelligence for Forward Keys. It's a leading company in Spain and has worked extensively in traveler analysis. And those of us who are interested in understanding how people travel can certainly look to Forward Keys for any support. Good afternoon from Valencia, Victor. Good morning for those of you who are joining us from the Americas. My name is Juan Gomez, the market intelligence specialist at Forward Keys. It's a pleasure for me to be here with you to discuss who we are, what our business model is, and what we think the future of the industry is in a post-COVID era and how we are dealing with destinations given the new paradigm that we face at the present time. Tourism is one of the key engines for the Spanish economy, as well as for many countries in the Americas, but every country's experience is different. As we've seen in recent months, the sector is reactivating and recovering, but the progress has been slow, and not all destinations have benefited in the same way. Travelers are looking to engage in these activities, and this represents a tremendous amount of wealth all over the world. And we're also seeing a tremendous technology development, and this is something that can lead to some chaos. And the idea would be to anticipate some of these issues at the global level, and then try to come about or come up with different ways to resolve these issues for travelers. And many public tourism agencies can understand some of the repercussions involved in some of these flows and address them accordingly. So depending on this phase, we can see an influx, a greater influx of travelers to different types of destinations. So we understand traveling a little bit better, which helps us provide better services for our customers. And in that way, we can maximize the opportunities. After 12 years of working hand in hand with different public tourism agencies, Forward Keys is a leading company in market intelligence. We have a number of offices in different continents, and we have different relationships with SINA in the Dominican Republic. And so we look at data collection and the proper analysis of that data to be able to garner the best information. We continue to expand our data sets, and many of which are highly reliant on social media information. So in this regard, we've become a leading company at the global level in tourism market intelligence, understanding the profile of travelers and working in conjunction with international organizations like the IDB, the World Tourism Organization, the Caribbean Tourism Organization, in addition to hundreds of other entities. We've been able to get a better understanding of travel trends. I wanted to share some statistics with you, and we are continuously collecting and improving the quality of our data. Every day, we analyze more than 6 million flight reservations, 70,000 flights, 100 million searches for travel destinations. And as I was saying, we look at the analysis and try to come up with the different indicators and trends that we see happening. Now, we use a subset of very powerful tools that help our customers maximize their performance. So we work primarily on the supply and demand model. And based on historical data, we can predict what is going to happen in the future. And we also work extensively with the flight searches, trying to understand what travelers are looking for when they look for flights and what they want. And we try to see how we can improve this experience for traveler. Ticket reservations is something else that we analyze. We try to garner more information about where people are traveling, but for how long. And this isn't just a feeling that we're trying to look at. We're trying to really predict what the behavioral elements will be for travelers. And in a situation as volatile as what we see at the present time, then reliable data is absolutely key. Additionally, we could use this data to not only help the traveler to get to their destination, but to also book their travel arrangements through the offering of different channels, be they online or in physical format. If they travel first class or in economy, all of these elements, as I was saying, we now have innovative ways to analyze what happens during an actual travel trip. Some data that we collect, in addition to what we've already collected in our database, allows us proper segmentation and a better understanding of traveler behavioral trends. So we try to address the different interests of travelers in all respects, but we also work with brands and other companies that see travelers as consumers. We have a presence in 85 countries. We work extensively with more than 150 customers. And we understand that the trends in travel have changed. And now what we're trying to achieve is a sustainable tourism model. What you want is the right type of tourist, and you want to ensure that the destination is still a viable one for not only travelers, but for local residents. And so by enhancing this experience, you will minimize the negative experiences, and this will allow you to maximize your tourism system by establishing specific objectives and goals and making the necessary adjustments to different destinations to maximize the experience for visitors. We use this through the analysis, or we do this through the analysis of qualitative and quantitative data. So the idea for destinations is to help them grow, better manage the service offerings that they have, and undergo a transformation. As part of the growth component, we want to monitor and reinvent destinations so that they can better manage their assets. And how do we share our tourism intelligence data? When we see the size and sophistication of some of our clients, one of the things that we ran into during the pandemic, in addition to the data analysis, we also ran into low budgets, especially in economies that are highly reliant on economic or tourism activity for their economies. And so many companies and destinations had different capacities. So we needed to try to adapt our offerings in such a way that any and all types of clients could take advantage of our data. Our platform is one of our tools that's based on smart systems and use-based cases. And we use a number of techniques to respond to different questions, given the vast diversity of clients that are out there. So we try to generate knowledge and information so that our customers can make better decisions based on actual data. What you see here on the screen really highlights our platform, which facilitates our ability to analyze different destinations, and we can also consider the degree of sophistication and the different assets that they have in place. This enhanced platform really facilitates travel for companies and for users, and this can allow companies to identify trends in the tourism sector. It's a tool that's very easy to use, and it allows you to monitor the tourism market. And another tool that you have here, like Forward Keys Connect, allows you to have direct access to uh, tourism intelligence systems. Now, in this way, our products, as I said, are geared towards coming up with solutions for different challenges that our customers face. This could be including the director of marketing, director of product, and we cover the entire spectrum of offerings from product to destination. So we do have practical cases that we use extensively to beef up our databases, but the innovation that we work into our products allows us to create the global technologies and allows us to establish comparative analysis between destinations in every corner of the known world. Now we are undergoing a true technology revolution, and the pandemic has been a unique opportunity for us to rethink how we do things, what models to use, and how we can adapt to the new waves of making decisions. Over the last 2 years of the pandemic, we've tried to reach out to the few travelers that are still traveling and try to mitigate the impact of the crisis to the extent possible. And this is something that we will continue to do, especially during this recovery period. One of the most common uses for our databases have been crisis management. We have an example here of the Dominican Republic using our data to try to manage their travelers or their traveler base from the US. And so this allowed them to plan their reserves in a much more effective way to meet the demands of tourism that they were going to face in the future. Additionally, the data also pointed to where tourists were going to be traveling in the Caribbean. And in just a few weeks, we saw how Jamaica, Bahamas, and Aruba started to increase the number of US travelers, whereas the Dominican Republic was losing customers. So this is something that's being used as the perfect tool for these countries to understand travelers a lot better. Some of the countries were affected by travel restrictions, but the tool allows them to anticipate the demand and to conduct better planning to address these trends. Now, anticipating demand has been a very effective tool for countries to try and look forwards and make the necessary changes to attract visitors from the US. Using the evolution of reserves for international arrivals to the Caribbean and the Dominican Republic, we saw an increase in reservations for future travel. Now, the Dominican Republic was operating below the average until September of last year, and the tourism ministry was basing their efforts on the databases that were available at the time. One example of the global recovery is on this list, the 20 most visited destinations during the pandemic. These were data were analyzed to be able to properly manage the systems in such a way that we can maximize their performance. Now, some flight routes can really drive visitors to a particular destination, but you also need to make the necessary adaptations there locally. Many of these systems don't consider travelers that come from other markets, such as people traveling from Europe that maybe have a layover in the US. So we are the only country or company in the world that provides this level of detail about so many different destinations because, as I stated, our approach is global. So destinations that are close to large airports need to have very close relationships with the various routes that they're connected to. And knowing this can allow us to examine the load factors and identify the health of the route that connects to many destinations. Now, when we talk about airfares, we can see the financial health of the company and the tourism industry in any given country. And we can use the tool to assess the demand. We could look at flight data with capacity data to help people to get to a destination. So if we have travelers that are looking for a flight from Barcelona to Bogota, but there may be an option through Madrid, then we can provide some alternatives for them through that route. As I've stated, we've analyzed the demand and prior trip history, but the tool also allows us to identify behavioral patterns in travelers by looking at the main sources for different concrete destinations. Now, when we talk about the analysis of tourists to certain well-known destinations, we try to see if they typically go through certain airports or if there are other alternatives. And the idea would be to monitor the tickets that are confirmed to travel to these airports and infer potential yields related to future tickets issued in those countries. So many times the destination is not necessarily linked to the closest airport. And so we have to look at this information from a multimodal standpoint. And this allows us to estimate any increase or decrease in the number of tourists through the number of tickets issued through these airports that are typically the closest to these destinations. And this is what we garner from the information that stems from these use cases. Now, the identification of these air travelers helps us understand how many tourists that land in a destination land on a reference airport. Many times they travel to the surrounding area or farther, and we can use the tool to see what the dispersion of these travelers is. So this requires the analysis of traffic patterns, and the idea would be to fulfill these objectives, which includes a broader geographic dispersion. And there are many applications that you can attach to this type of analysis. And of course, this is very helpful in the marketing conversations because we can come up with these virtual destinations, understand the profiles of these travelers, and by bringing both together, we can understand the overall demand. Something that we did with Visit Valencia was the identification of patterns of destinations visited by travelers. Now, one focus that we attached to this was non-air travelers, and we needed to see what the most visited neighborhoods were in a particular city, the number of hours that they were in the city. And the idea was to understand whether or not there was any type of flow to certain areas and a destination. And by way of analyzing the expenditures on dinners or lunches and other consumables. And this allows us to enhance those destinations for a growth in travelers. And so by looking at the time frames and the mobility data that I mentioned about other airports, we have people that come in via boat to certain cities, and we looked at the schedules in which travelers visit destination cities, and we tried to understand whether or not these could be potential clients for other sectors. And this allows us to understand what locations based on the level of activity represents high or low potential for growth. That's all I had to say. and I'm eager to listen to the solutions from the other colleagues. But if you have any questions, please submit it through the chat, as Victor mentioned. Of course, you can reach out to me directly through my email after the event in case you have any question that I may not have answered during the Q&A. So thank you very much. Thank you very much, Juan. You didn't just talk about the prior to the trip phase, but also during the trip phase, which is also extremely valuable information to assess the profile of travelers. And with that in mind, we're going to talk about two new experiences that we've selected. The first that has to do with gamification. Gamification is a new term in the tourism world, but in Spain, especially for companies that I'm going to introduce, this is something that is extremely innovative, that's been extremely well received. We have Ramon Garcia, who is from Gymkhana Turística, which is a company that digitalizes tourism destinations and routes, and they combine technology with gamification and destinations. Ramon, you have the floor. Thank you very much, Victor. Good morning to everyone. My name is Ramon, and we work with Gymkhana Turística, the digital world for the 4.0 industry, and for over 2 years since the advent of the pandemic, we've been primarily focused in this sector. I like to say all the time that we have the good fortune of working in the happiness industry, which is tourism. And there is another element that's very attractive and appealing, is that I have to play games all day as part of my job. And so when we talk about gamification, what we're really talking about is something that we've heard over a number of years, that we use game elements to create an activity and achieve that desired result. Many children, for example, learn a great deal by playing a game. And this doesn't just apply to children, it applies to people of all ages. I'm 45 years old and I play all the time and I learn more and more all the time. And so the idea of linking knowledge and learning to a game is really appealing. This is just an image of 2 or 3 years ago in Stockholm. They tried to conduct a test in that city. They wanted to look at how many people that use the metro use the regular stairs versus the escalator. And we tried to change people's behavioral patterns by converting the stairs into something that looks more like a keyboard on a piano, to see if that would create any kind of impact. So as a result of this, they turned the whole thing into a giant piano, the staircase that is, and what they achieved was nothing short of spectacular. They increased by 70% the number of people that use the regular stairs versus the escalator.
So when you bring in gamification to any one of these parts, then you see how this promotes the use. We said that success is very simple. Many of you will become acquainted with this because in Spain, we learned about this 3 months ago. It's a very simple game, Wordle. You don't need only the mobile app. It's a different word every day. And this is what you need. And you have no time set. I spend 4 or 5 minutes with my son every day, and it's the simplest thing possible. So what possibilities are allowed with gamification applied to the tourist sector? Well, the purposes and the objectives that we seek is to favor motivation, that is to say, to move someone to visit a place because of the mere fact that it offers an experience based on emotions, and to improve the experience of that visit in keeping with storytelling, that is to say, that thread that will guide the user through different points of that site, playing on this. And our colleague mentioned this, the award to the visit of the prize. We focus on the destination, I already have the user in the destination, but through gamification, I can convince them to visit my destination. And on this image is from a couple of weeks ago, and I was attempting to make a reservation in a camping to travel with my son during the upcoming holidays, and I got this roulette, and you clicked on it, and the roulette started moving, and in each one of the options, you got a different discount, and it was really easy to do this. So just like you see other sites where it is very difficult to be able to provide personal data for the users, in this webpage, it was very easy to get my email. And it was very attractive because I was playing a game, because what I wanted was to click that button that would make the roulette move. I got a discount and I was able to make my reservation in that destination that I was looking for. Then we have a gamification that is applied once the user is in the destination. The objective we seek is to attract this user to bring in more participants, more visitors to the destination. And we speak of the town because we focus a lot on a small destination, because ultimately big cities look not for a large number of tourists, but it has to be quality tourism, managing with the mayors of small towns, 800, 500, or 600 inhabitants. And so what the mayors want is quality tourist users. And so ultimately these users, what these destinations allow us to do is to generate more income and revenue to these towns. And we're offsetting this with rewards. You can see that the words that I'm using different concepts linked to gamification. It could be progression, as well as a test, as well as clues or rewards. In this case, an image that we have, this is a real case from a month ago in a small town, a very small place, where we have a tourist route. In Gymkhana, which is what we implement, we have there an artisan that produces honey. And this artisan has produced 300 honey vinegar, and it has labeled this with the image of Gymkhana, the image that we're explaining, distributed in 2-3 states to see who goes through the town and does the Gymkhana and follows this tourist path. They receive an email, and then they move to, or they go to these establishments in order to pick up the reward. And these rewards could be connected to offers, discount, gastronomic products from the area. And you can imagine the potential that this has in a small town of 1,500 inhabitants, and how we're capable of empowering the traffic of tourists to these small towns and generating economic development for these small towns. Then let me explain a specific detail, an example that we have, which shows this clearly. We have digitalization, which is necessary in all these data. Many of these destinations tell me that there are a lot of people going through the town, but they also need information about the people. So what can we do so that this Gymkhana, which is necessary, that they have to use the mobile phones in order to have access to the route. I can obtain statistics and behaviors of the tourists going through the town, get their email, or have more data available that will allow me to connect the tourist to that. And a very simple example that we have and that we're implementing is a tourist office by chat. And this is for very small towns that don't have a tourist office as such. And we place these, and the only thing they have to do is to use a QR code, go to the tourist office in town, and then our operator, Amelia, this is Amelia, who's the official operator, and that they have to ask Amelia what the specific things are in that town. And so the user is checking the information on the webpage or in other places, but they're doing it through a conversation. And so we collect a lot of information that allows the town to be able to process the information and use it for tourist purposes. So we go into a practical example of what a Gymkhana digital, tourist digital Gymkhana is. And this is a route, a path, a tourist path for a digital path. I need my mobile phone in order to play the game. And in order to solve this, I need to be in person in that point of destination. So it is an activity where we need the user to be in person in this destination. And what is the purpose of it all? To get to know the heritage of the culture of that destination, which in other terms is different. My son, 10-year-old son, a Sunday afternoon, I say, Diego, let's go to the museum. And my son usually says, no, he doesn't feel like going to the museum on a Sunday afternoon. But if I say on Saturday or Sunday, let's go to Barcelona, to Saloa to do the Gymkhana. And my son says yes, because they know that Gymkhana is a path where he's going to play and solve the code. And he's going to learn a lot about the culture and the heritage of that place. In this case, it's a real case. This is a story of Morella. Morella is in the community of Valencia in Spain. And it is a path that you have 60 minutes. And more or less, all these paths, from the point of view of the user psychology, have been established and set so that a user can log on and finish with a lot of motivation in the happiest way possible. Because if the path takes you for over 2 hours, then the motivation comes down. So why do I need the motivation to be kept at the highest level possible? Because I will make the best so that when they finish this, I will ask them for their email. I will ask them to give their opinion. I will also ask them to share the tourist path to my destination on social networks. So what I'm doing with these users that follow the path is delegating on them the promotion of my destination. So we follow the thread we used in those places, which is when I log onto a webpage, in many cases, they ask for my email ahead of time or other personal information. So we do it the other way around. First, we want them to go through something. And at the end, if I really like this, then I get the information that I need. It's as easy as getting to the destination to scan the QR code, and then you can find it on social media, the WhatsApp, and then you follow the path. Should you have scanned the QR code, you might have gotten something like this. It is a response for the user to find the cover page in Papaluna, and then the user starts playing. You follow the story, and then you follow the enigma, the code that you have to solve by visualizing and looking amongst other resources, the heritage places you have, the shield of the city hall, the windows in the church, or the arches in the main square. You can find this in the last part that you have to the right, and any negative response would have to be changed. We look for the complexity in this. It's like having a script, a book, and then you leave 5 minutes later. It has to be sufficiently complicated so that this could represent a challenge, just like in any game, but that you would have cues that would move you to continue moving forward. In this case, the game gives me a cue. I end up solving it, and then I answer the question with a correct answer. And then it tells me, yes, in fact, you can go to the QR, gives me the learning lesson. And as a user, I get this from this destination. This happens in 12 different points, 12 different locations in the destination. And when they make it all the way to the end, they were solving the final enigma, which is solving the decision that the Papaluna made in this destination. So we give them an explanation, then they get a reward. Should the destination wish to offer a gastronomic product, a discount, or something, a reward, provided that this is shared on social media or WhatsApp. So very easily, this is what we're doing and bringing it to the public by attracting them to these destinations. And therefore, this destination can enjoy by having tourist activities. 3 very simple success cases because of different pathologies. Cambrils is a coast town where the main problem that they had is that most of the users that go to this place have to visit the maritime path, and they never made it to downtown. So what we did is to offer a tourist path with a new game that begins with a maritime path. They have to solve the enigmas, the clues, and then they have to follow this to find the treasure chest, and then they're sent to downtown, and they end up discovering what the last clue is. So what we're getting is to move the flow of visitors from the beaches towards the downtown part of the town. Alcolea is a very small town in Almeria, and what they want is to empower tourism in the inner towns. So what we do is that we bring our public to those destinations. And then we have another city that is so well known as Barcelona, where we're developing many routes and many gymkhanas, where the first 2 begin in the neurological center in the Rambla from Catalonia. And then after the Gymkhanas, people end up being motivated by enjoying and being very happy with the path that they followed very quickly, an hour and a half, and moving in a kilometer and a half. And when they're done with the Gymkhanas, we send them to other Gymkhanas that we have in other neighborhoods peripheral to the city, where what they need is more visitors by the city. And then ultimately, the main advantage with these projects or tourist routes that bring you to these destinations is that the ease of traveling. These is that my parents are 70 years old, and every weekend, every time we open a new destination, a new Gymkhana, I send them a WhatsApp, a new link, and I explain my game. If my father, I have to tell him that they have to discharge or download the application and they have to pay, then I lost them. Some time ago, I read an article that was published in the US that said that 49% of the population was downloading these apps to move around. And this is an explanation. Personally, in order to download an app, it has to be quite significant, that is to say bank or health, because otherwise I won't do it. So what we want is for these destinations to people follow the path. It has to be a digital path in the simplest way possible, or to follow the link, that it be for free for everyone. Culture for every level of pockets, economic development, because ultimately these very small towns that have more needs to trigger economic movement. And amongst these, we have a very simple example. The community of Valencia has a project going on, which is the 24 towns in the Valencia community with a very small number of inhabitants. And what we do now is having these paths in each one of the towns in order to attract public to these destinations through raffles or other types of means that will enable to bring us these publics to the inner part of the towns before they disappear. So ultimately, these routes allow me to enjoy these 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. And if I play the path of 4 o'clock in the morning or 5 in the afternoon and decentralize tourism, I give you the examples of the city of Barcelona or Cambrils, where I empower less tourist areas with this movement forced flow of users through these sites. Opinions, 99% of the opinions that we have are people that say that it has been a very positive experience. Children and parents enjoyed this wonderfully, and we get excited with each clue. This is one of the elements that we have with gamification, that is to say progression. The fact that you overcome levels and my level of satisfaction increases. In Cambrils, it was quite enjoyable, very practical, with the clues and the vocabulary. It's a very interesting to discover corners and towns, a very touristy place such as Salom and Gymkhana, where we explained the story about James I, getting to know the story of our forefathers in a very different way. And to conclude, getting to the end, Maya Angelou said, people will forget what you said, they will forget what you did, but they never forget how you made them feel. So what we want with these digital sites, gamified, is to have a direct impact, 100% on the emotions of the people. That is to say, to use the excitement of people when they follow the path, and to be able to offer discount on gastronomic products, etc., in order to bring the user and have them feel pleased throughout the entire path. I hope that I stuck to the time, and thank you very much, everyone, for following this. Ultimately, we will have time for questions at the end if you want to go into the detail of this. Thank you very much, Ramon, for all that you've shared and for sticking to the time, which is extraordinary because we have 3 colleagues that come after you. So let us now move on to the other phase, which is the during, as we said previously, and let us now continue with another type of a project that is being widely used in Spain, which is digitalization of tourist offices, digitalization of these tourist offices, how they're virtualized and how they're digitalized. We have Jesus de Bejar, who's the co-founder of a company in Valencia that is called iUrban, a company that is specialized by creating virtual offices of care 24/7. Jesus, you have the floor. Good afternoon. Hello, everyone. Well, good afternoon, good morning, depending on where you're located. I'm Jesus, a partner of iUrban, and happy to follow this. We were talking a little bit about the three states to be able to digitalize a tourist office. We're talking about the before, the during, and the after during the visit itself. And let us now talk about those three stages, but talking about the digitalization of a tourist office. Because an office for us has to provide the possibility of interacting. You need to contact people before they arrive, a web portal, different communication channels, and during the office itself, how you look after people, how the information is provided, what sort of information, and then the after, how they interact and how they're capable of reflecting this. Well, iUrban is a startup. It was a startup sponsored by Telefonica in its beginning, and I represent part of the team where we specialized in the digitalization of tourist offices, and we work with Segitur in different forms, in different environments and tourist destinations. So we based this on the experience of ONH. So the first question is, what is considered as a tourist office? Because of the definition itself, it's a physical space where a tourist goes, they pick up information, technical information from the people that are there. They provide either a booklet, a leaflet, a map, a little bit at the starting point to get to know the office. It's an office, it follows a schedule, it has certain limitations. So my question is, why not digitalize a tourist office in order to have different points of information, particularly 24/7 at any time of day? Because simply with different apps, QRs, mobile apps, or tactile support, so we can cover any point of the municipality at the beginning of our stay in order to reach the information. So Bruno Goval is the president of the Federation of the Tourist Association in Europe, and he says that a tourist office must be capable of seducing, capable of luring, having accessible information, something that attracts tourists. You can please the tourist through different channels. You can offer different contents, whatever the tourist requests, because many times we make the mistake of treating all tourists equally. So ultimately, through different channels, we can know exactly what information is the one that is of interest to that specific tourist. And then, that is to say, through different components that we're going to see, project forms, paths, downloads, mobile, selfies, we will be able to follow different data of the forms where we will learn about the information. So when we can do that, that is to say, to attract clients to a webinar, providing information so that they can come back, segmented information, new paths to see if they like sports channels, a little bit to get to know the tourist, not for a one-time thing, but to be able to attract the tourist and attract the customer loyalty. But why digitalize an office? Well, ultimately, we say that the information is power. We must have knowledge about when a person comes in, what they ask, why they're asking for that, what information is of interest to them, and then saving, not in the amount of paper of the design that entails in having a tourist office, simply maps and leaflets, having information for different paths. So ultimately, what are we to achieve with digitalization? Not only savings, but to be able to have instant campaigns on the spot and be very agile and nimble. We will be acting 24/7 because it is not a brick and mortar office, but you can play around the municipality by having a digital office 24/7. And based on that information, we will be able to make some decisions, because you cannot make decisions about the municipality and to create new products or tourist products and to be able to help trade, local trade, if we don't know what is of interest to the tourist. for data segmentation, and we'll be able to know what it is and to make consistent, coherent decisions and clear decisions. As I was saying, we will see 3 points. The before, ultimately, how are we to know about a municipality and to disseminate the information on social networks through Instagram, Facebook profiles, the most widely known. We must have some sort of online contact, be it a web form. Ultimately, we know how to fill it up, what's a business, when the office is open, and even chatbot or virtual assistants, digital assistants. And then we will be able to segment this to expedite the sending of the offer, going this directly sent to the requester. As we were saying, social networks, and let me show you a case with someone we work, the municipality in Malaga. We started dealing with this issue, social networks and all the rest. Very quickly, we obtained 70,000 users, and ultimately at the level of what? Well, the level of content quality, a lot of images, and the entire tourist content must be very attractive. We have to think of our position when you are looking at planning your vacation and you want to check one destination or another one, and any detail counts, because it is very interesting to be able to work on the before. Then the use of social networks. This is a quick overview to use the most widely used networks, Facebook, Instagram, and to take a look at the age profile, 24 to 54 years of age, which is the most widely used, and that's why it is important. And then the second point that we've seen, communication channel, previous communication, web forms, as we said previously, official channels, forums, assistants, social networks, WhatsApp business, chatbots, or virtual assistants. And then to be able to have a CRM for information, centralized CRM, to be able to register, to look at all the requests, and to be able to personalize what is being requested. And then we have the personalization of packages. And here we will show you an example of how a tourist, without the need for interacting with a tourist office in any one of the portals, they can personalize their own route through the use of a form, using planning services, and personalize their stay. And then you can condition a bit to what to see or what to visit. Ultimately, what do we achieve with this? Well, we obtain real data where we do not need to have a long satisfaction poll to know at the end what we need for this tourist in particular. Also, another option, we have the portal where we show all the resources, the activities. We give information where they can make the reservation. This is the internet, a tourist destination we're working with, and how you can communicate directly to the tourist office in its schedule. And then at the end, we want to have segmented information and quality information, all data, not for all tourists equally, but it can be segmented. And then to see how the entire information must be motivated. This is a bit of what Ramon was saying, that ultimately you don't have any hurdle to log in. It's an app, it's a website, and you don't need to create any hurdles. The tourist can log on from any one of the platforms, the web portal, the QR, any device, any app. And so what is important is not to have any hurdle to allow people to log in whenever they want. In that same information, we will be able to include everything that is PDF resources to get them online, and directly through web apps, everything that entails in having segmented information, virtual paths, guides, TLFs, everything segmented so that it will only be an image of the information received by the tourist. And then we will be talking about the during. Ultimately, this is at the time of the stay, how they interact, the tourist interacts once that they are in the municipality to adapt to their stay. Ultimately, it is not necessary to have a satisfaction survey or to have a lot of rejections, but through this gamification, to have a selfie, to personalize a path adapted to your taste, a whole set of activities, and you can have real data, and then you generate tourist visitor records, and you adapt it to what is of interest to the tourist. And we will have an impact with content. We have to work a lot on contents, images, videos, virtual networks, online PDFs. So we have to bring together the entire information to be able to segment it into one single platform. So we will avoid having them wait a lot. You no longer have to go to the tourist office in person, but we can play with this with any space at the portal, the during, and we'll see a few examples, or in the office itself. And then at the end, where does the tourist or any person feels better, more comfortable with that information, and to download it to the cell phone with a QR with all the tourist resources, points of interest, the description in their language of choice, how they need, how they can get there, the schedules, the shifts, all the resources, guides, PDFs, data, reality, everything together. Something that we like to say, it is not only tourism, but we will attempt to make it much more dynamic and to see whether we can locate not only restaurants that everybody becomes acquainted with that, where to go shopping, what is a typical product that you get in that place. And so we have to promote the local trade agenda, events in real time, and then everything that has to do with the platform, because ultimately we need to leave those PDFs, those maps with the people to be digitalized and for you to be able to download them and take them directly into your device. Okay, so that the first point to adapt to your stay, we split them into two. One is the interest, obviously culture, nature, leisure, gastronomy, arts and crafts, those corners where you want to take a picture of the family. We're working a lot on that. And what we do is to segment it by time so that we can personalize the routes. Half a day, 2-3 days, all the contents. We adapt them to the time so that we can personalize the visit. Historic places, unknown places, when it's a second or third time that you come back to that place, guided visits, so all the information of what are we going to do, look and feel quite friendly. Why? Because we have to understand that ultimately they will be dealing with all sorts of profiles. So in one multi-platform system, we will have where to execute this, everything that has to do with contents, what we've seen, personalized, so that everything will be within one same image. In this case, we see the City Hall of Malaga because we're working with them on this. Okay?
Now we're going to move into how we get to a tourism office. How does the technician support the office so they can bring about that wow factor, right, when they game? So we could have a video wall with support from video images, and we could also customize that route that can be shown on the large screen, and we could support that tourist at each and every point along their travel path. Many times people come in and try to avoid long lines. And another consideration is the wait time, 7-10 minutes. In that time frame, that's the maximum amount of time that we could dedicate to a tourist. And the rest of the time we have travelers and tourists waiting in line. And so before they even have a chance to think about it, they've been waiting for 30 minutes. So the idea is to have rapid and easy access to the information that they can collect on their own and then set off on their trip. Now, this could include totems, different touch screens that are available there. And people can just come up to one of these screens, look for the information that they're seeking, get the information, and get on their way. We can play with different formats, not just large spaces, but wait rooms, support for technicians. As designers of hardware and software, we can adapt our products to the spaces. First, we need to understand what the local terrain looks like and the different formats for the offices and the spaces that are providing these services. And the QR code is also something that's very desirable, not only because of ease of use, but it also gives you a certain amount of privacy. You could have a slightly inclined screen. People don't like to be watched when they're doing their business, so they could just take a QR code shot or scan and then find their own personal private space and access the information that they want. Now, this is the most important thing. What happens when the office is closed due to the schedule or lack of resources? We need to be able to continue providing information. So we can play it with different devices or different solutions based on what we've seen. We could have QR codes on the windows of offices, other types of points and devices. We could even mount devices on the outer walls of the offices that can provide information for visitors. And then we have these other displays in areas where there are large flows of people that can access the information. This is an example of what you can install on the storefront to an office. You can mount this on a wall, and people can either scan the QR code or just use the touch screen. And if we have a window, we could use a digital display that will be vandalism resistant, and we provide the information in such a way that people can just get the information they want and move on. And from this, we can go to external sources, large totems that can be placed in high flow areas, locations where cruise ships unload their passengers and other popular areas. And we can adapt to any location, really. This is an example of how we could provide a secondary alternative use to, say, a telephone booth. We could put one of these touch pad or touch displays in one of these structures and make great use of that. So all of this is designed to make the user experience a lot easier and more effective. Now, something that's very important is that people might say, well, I want to set up my tourism website. But we need to understand that at the end of the day, websites need to be addressed in a different way. On a website, you can average maybe 7 to 10 minutes trying to use a mouse on a larger interface or some kind of desktop device to access information, but you need to focus. You need to look for the most important elements. I need to be able to get to the information that I want with no more than 3 clicks, because otherwise we'll lose the tourists because we will lose their interest. So the content needs to be high quality, a lot of imagery, a lot of graphic elements, some virtual elements. And so we need to combine all of these elements in the best way. And when, for example, devices are not active, like digital billboards or posters, in some of these offices with the mounted devices, we could use the touch screens as displays for different campaigns or perhaps even advertising. So many times we could look at these devices and look at different facilities. And what we can do is put everything into a single platform with all of the information that's available to tourists. Now looking at the after stage, at the end, when we have different registrations, people will have access to forms, customization of routes. You know, people can use the QR codes that they can scan. And so we can then use the opportunity to collect real-time data. And we can't just collect it, we need to put it to good use. We can use it to see what is of most interest to that traveler and then create packets for the traveler. And so we could collect this data. And one of the things we do frequently is to take a selfie, for example. You can send it to your own mobile phone with a message thanking the traveler for visiting Malaga or for visiting this destination. You can include something that relates to something new that they could do on their next visit or something like that. And the most important element is the key indicators. This is something that we need to collect to understand how the traveler moved around at any particular destination, the content that was most visited, the number of total users and unique users, the number of downloads, maps, guides, satisfaction surveys. And we also can use the geolocation data that is collected to see whether or not they did in fact visit the locations that they established for their route. So I like to use this quote: the key for being successful in businesses is understanding the direction that the world is traveling in and try to get there before anybody else. So this is what we're trying to do when we digitalize destinations. We're trying to touch upon all of these issues, and you cannot be left behind. You need to try to collect as much information as possible about travelers so that you can understand them better and predict what they may want in the future. And just to conclude, I'd like to pose the question: how is the information being collected? How is it coming in? Is it during the before, during, or the after stages? And we work with specialists in data analysis, and we have some partners that specialize in this. We would love to support your efforts in any way that we can. You can reach out to us at any time, 24/7, if you have any questions or interest. Thank you very much. Thank you, Jesus, for your presentation and for sticking to the allotted time. I wanted to remind the audience that once we finish the presentations, that we still have two left. We will read some of the questions that have been submitted through the chat. And I wanted to remind everybody that you can go to the chat room in the bottom part of your Zoom screen and submit your question or comment, which we will try to subsequently read at the end of the presentations. So let's move on to the fourth presentation. Let's go to the after stage of the travel cycle. The other presentations have touched upon this stage a little bit, but I think this is a very relevant issue. We have Adrian Gonzalez from the Atribus company. They provide services that allow tourism entities to anticipate the key trends in travel, and they connect their tools through online resources. Adrian, you have the floor. Good afternoon, good morning in Latin America. Welcome from the other side of the pond. As Victor said, I always like to begin with a quote. Your brand is what they say about you when you're not around. Because when we talk about a person or a brand, what do they say when we're not around? And this leads me to another question. I'm sorry that this isn't more bidirectional, but as I understand, everybody is connected to the internet, but I'd like to ask, who among you is not linked to social media? I wanted to talk about active listening and social listening. So what are we at Atribus? We are a social intelligence platform, as Victor stated. What we try to do is collect and analyze conversations that travelers or tourists are having about any kind of subject. And we're trying to understand what they're talking about, who is doing the talking, how are they talking, and in what way can we use this information. I'd like to explain first and foremost what social listening is. In addition to collecting these posts or opinions or collecting these perspectives shared by users in real time, we try to process that information that we collect from social media, as well as other channels online, blogs, websites. And we process the information, we structure it in a certain way, categorize it, label it, and then we analyze the information. The idea is to use AI techniques and machine learning techniques to understand who is providing the information, man or woman, where are they from, what are their interests, what's their demographic profile, what are they talking about, and how are they talking about it. So there's this process involved in this whole social listening concept. So what is our methodology? So the actual average at the global level of online use is 57%. In the Americas, we're at 71%, that we've seen an increase of more than 20 points since 2015. So this is what happened with this global pandemic. So we have accelerated the digital transformation. But if we talk about social media, we average about 6 hours a day on social media. And today, in 2022, we have 10% more users on social media. That is 424 million more users of social media. So at the end of the day, the data is public, and we just need to collect it and process it to understand what experiences are being shared by visitors or tourists when they travel to a destination or a physical location. But within this big data framework, how can we understand these users? It's important for people to understand, or for people to try to focus within all of those massive amounts of data, what are the most important elements. And given that we collect tourism opinions in real time based on what we see in all of these channels that you can see on screen, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, as well as others like TikTok. And additionally, when we talk about the information, we're talking about tourism information. So the idea is to try and understand what imprint or what message is being conveyed by tourists when they come back from their travel experience, and whether or not the perspective is positive, null, or negative. And the idea is to collect massive amounts of information, and the people responsible for strategy making can take the most salient points of that data to make better decisions. And so through AI techniques, we can analyze big data information. We could use processing and natural language technology and analysis to understand what people are saying. We need to also eliminate the noise inherent in these massive amounts of information. And we try to get to the most salient points that we're trying to access. And the idea is to save time by making all of this analysis as automatic as possible. Some of the solutions that we offer to the tourism sector appear on the screen: tourism insights, identification of influencers. What's the profile of the tourist or the traveler based on certain tourism offerings? What's the tourism reputation, and what are these people doing, competitors doing, to stand out in the market? Today, we're going to focus on the travel cycle, focusing on the last stage, which is the memory and the valuation of the experience. These are the stages that we analyzed through conversations that we've had with social media users. The inspiration prior to a trip, they're not just looking for information, but what kind of support are users asking for in their communities when they manifest a desire or an intent to travel. And once they have made the decision to travel somewhere, what's their planning process? Now, once they are at the destination, in the midst of their traveling experience, what are they publishing or posting? And what experiences are they posting, or what locations are they visiting? So this information allows us to categorize different offerings, different packages related to different experiences in different destinations, but we're focusing primarily on what they're telling us. And at the final stage, when they remember their experience and they assess the value of it, we also collect that information. This flow appears to be linear, but I like to describe it in a cyclical way, because in this last stage, the subsequent remembering the experience stage, it's typical for travelers who feel inspired to, at the final stage, start thinking about undergoing the experience again, perhaps to another destination. And it's very important for us to use support tools in the digital realm when a tourist finishes a trip and they share information about the experience during the different fora, online, social media. We can use these tools to ascertain what these folks are talking about, what other people are doing. Now, in the third stage, the actual travel experience, you need to assess the data being collected in real time. You need to look at the activities that these visitors are engaged in and what they're posting about them. And it's in the last stage when they start to act on a lot of these other digital support tools. So this is like a feedback loop. And as long as visitors or travelers leave a good comment or manifest a successful experience, and this attracts the attention of other potential travelers. And so we can use these posts, these experiences shared as a database that will feed the process to attract other travelers. Now, when we talk about working with different tourism destinations, this is where we can capitalize on this data analysis capability. So when we try to identify potential international tourists in other countries, especially prior to any travel, and especially in their own language, we have to understand where they come from, where they've been in terms of destinations, and where they reside at the present time. Or even we could look at the segmentation that we can conduct. Many times we say cases like Peñíscola. It's in the peninsula of Castellón near Valencia, Spain. It's a coastal town, and it's basically advertised as a beachfront property. But it's important for people to understand that they don't just have the beach to go to there. They could visit other attractive destinations that nearby. So over the course of the last year, they've been engaged in publicity campaigns with videos of different tourism destinations. One example of this is the Papaluna Castle, which appeared in the world-renowned Game of Thrones series, and this has served to attract a lot of visitors to that location. You could also use these tools for, say, mountain climbing or to conduct a gastronomy tour. Now, we have some other locations of value on the island, but the idea is to delocalize the most popular destination and try to mobilize people to other key points of interest that are close by. When we talk about specialized tourism, Juan was mentioning this at the beginning of his presentation. So we have very specialized tourism that can influence the lifestyle of a certain location. This could be in the form of specific events or festivals or local festivities. And this is very effective with cruise ship arrivals because it can change the situation for a predetermined amount of time. So when we see how the dynamic is working during that period of time and what the experience is for those travelers and how they're sharing the experience, then the tourism offering can be adapted to what we're seeing in those key periods of time. And this involves looking at the events that are happening in a certain part of the city to be able to put them on the calendar. Now, if we have a music festival, perhaps a tourist will go to a festival for a week, 2 or 3 or 4 days. But in addition to the music festival, what else are they going to do when they're in town? And this is something where we can create and capitalize on some spaces that are available to mobilize them towards other points of interest. It's important for us to understand the experience felt by the tourist when staying at a certain hotel and what they're saying about the services offered by the hotel. Beyond the usual satisfaction survey related to a hotel stay, something that's really good about social media and the postings is that many times the tourist doesn't really know what's happening in the background. This is like passive observation. They don't understand everything that's happening in a hotel, but beyond just leaving a complaint, if they had, say, a good experience at the pool, that the room was really clean, that the buffet was really good or wasn't very good, whether the hotel had parking. And so we could adapt to all of these comments and segment the data in that way. Now, lastly, especially given the gigantic crisis that we've experienced over the course of the last 2 years, we also need to be able to manage crises. And this requires that we be resilient and that we be adaptable to demands made by visitors. And getting back to the prior example, one of the things that we've seen during the pandemic is that Tenerife was set up as a destination for people who wanted to be in a comfortable location with good weather and be able to telework. And so it was being proposed as a long-term tourism destination for people who wanted to not only enjoy a vacation type experience, but also telework from there. In Spain, we have an island. It's part of the Canary Islands. It's called La Palma, and they've been working with us to try and take advantage of these long-term tourists that want to telework, and they're offering their location as a really good location for people to travel there and then perhaps go back to the new normal once the catastrophe subsides. I wanted to conclude by talking about two concrete cases. I mentioned one, the one related to Tenerife, and the one on the left is referring to Castellón, a small coastal town. And we see here the Ferrero Rocher brand. They are a chocolate company. And they use this town every year to put this light show together. So when we talk about analyzing the different stages of a visitor's travel experience, in order for tourists to select a certain destination, perhaps influenced by what they see on social media, this is the type of thing that can be used to drive people to these types of locations. But Some of these locations are already set in terms of what their characteristics are, say like a beach town or something like Ubet or something like that. But in this case, we're talking about publicizing a festival. And when we look at travelers and how they assess their travel plans, they want to look at all of these elements. So one of the things we need to do is to try to create incentives to drive people to other destinations where they wouldn't normally go on their own. So this could include sports activities or even stargazing activities at night. One of the reports that you can download from the platform includes all of this information, and you can see here a positive review as well as a negative review. So here's a comment here. If you're going to come to the peninsula to see the light show, save the trip. It's just one plaza and one street. So on the right, on the review related to Tenerife, these are influencers, by the way, but the review here says it's a fantastic place. You have to come to Tenerife. So I think that's all I have. And just to conclude, we try to anticipate tourism demand, understanding what people are thinking, and we're looking for tourists and trying to come up with customized solutions for them. And this is our contact information in case you have any follow-up questions and any questions about the technology. I know we have a Q&A coming up. I'll be happy to answer any questions. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Adrian. We have one last presentation. Many of you are expressing an interest in the content of the presentation, and we're going to cover this during the closing part of the webinar. At the IDB website, in the sectors page, on the top, you could go to the sustainable tourism page, and you'll be able to access not only the sessions, but also the presenters' materials. And you can also access the website for Segitur, and you'll have the presentations available there, as well as all of the materials that we're sharing. On YouTube, you'll also be able to access the videos for both sessions, today's and the one for Thursday. We have one last guest.
He will be speaking about a technology that could be considered as a cross-cutting technology, the before, the during, and the after, and that is virtual reality. Virtual reality as it is applied to a point of destination. So we have Cesar Urbina, the creative director of a company known as Iralta VR. And this is a study that specializes in creating immersive experiences, domestic as well as international, has several references in Spain, in moments and museums, etc. Cesar, you are recognized. Hello, good afternoon. Can you hear me? Yes, we can hear you perfectly well. Very well. It's a pleasure to be able to address all of you. And what a better example to talk about tourism and virtual reality besides yours truly. I'm addressing you from Finland. We are a Spanish company with headquarters in Madrid. And as Victor was saying, we work for institutions and we have references that are located all over the world. And today I'm addressing you from Finland because we are now preparing a video that is being prepared for the European Investment Bank. So what I'd like to attempt to explain today in the 20 minutes that I've been given is some of the examples of what we've done in the last few years. and how we believe, from our point of view, that virtual reality can help us significantly. It can help us to promote our destinations so that spectators and users will become acquainted with the destinations before, during, and after the trip. So let me now show you our company, introduce our company, Iralta VR. This is a company that was created 11 years ago when we started creating video and virtual reality content. And since then, we realized that we had become creators of the virtual world. We were working with the recent technological tools, innovations in order to create experiences in virtual reality. And so we started to realize that everything we knew as producers or as directors of movies and publicity is that this changes the narrative when applied to a new way of storytelling. It was no longer how we studied this in communication schools, but this was a new way of communicating. We had to get the public excited, and we had to transport them to virtual worlds. And in order to do that, we needed to use a virtual reality and show reality in a different way. So ever since then, we've designed virtual experiences, enhanced augmented experiences, immersive interactive experiences, video mapping, 360 for all sorts of clients, and always attempting to help and to make people understand that we have to plan adequately a distribution strategy in order to make sure that the content that is being created together with the destinations or the agencies to be enjoyed as much as possible. Because many a times what happens is that we want to create the best possible experience, and then we don't know very well what the best way of delivering this to the public, because not everything has the best design for mobile experiences. And sometimes we can create spectacular projects and then they are not rightly focused on how the user can enjoy these. So we believe that from the very beginning, what you have to do is to sit down and jointly create the best strategy and to plan it in order to attain the success of the project. Perhaps I'm speaking quite fast, but I had to go from Helsinki, the downtown part of Helsinki, and I'm a bit accelerated, so I apologize. I don't want to go beyond the time allotted for my presentation. So for 12 years now, we started working on Video 360. We've worked with all sorts of destinations, brands, TV networks, and institutions. And some of the institutions we've worked with is the IDB. From the end, and I remember 7 years ago when we started creating a project with an IDB team in Panama. And so this was the first of 6 projects that we've carried out with different IDB teams in order to promote the projects for social development, schools, water, agriculture, education that are now being carried out in Latin America. And we've cooperated with all these projects. And at the same time, we've worked in Spain with paradores, tour operators, Segitur, with Tour España, with Marcelo. So we have all sorts of projects, and we've been discovering what the best way of storytelling is by using virtual reality. But let me give you some examples and tell you a little bit about what we do. And so I invite you to navigate, to surf through our network, our YouTube channels, and for you to see all sorts of examples of the things we do. There's nothing better than wearing these glasses in order to understand well why virtual reality is used and what its purpose is, what it serves for. Sometimes it is difficult to let people understand what is promoted reality, a real virtual reality. And so for another topic that is very much in vogue, very much in fashion today, and we don't know what this will become in the future, is the metaverse. And now I believe that there's no publicity campaign, institution, destination that is not talking about metaverse. I have not included this in the presentation because I believe that nowadays it is something that does not exist. It is something that is being created, and in the coming years, we will become part of it in a completely direct fashion in many of the works that we do and the way we relate to others. But for the time being, it doesn't exist. We don't have any metaverses. It is only one, bringing together several technologies where we can communicate amongst us, like using a keyboard now, and we start using it on a computer. Well, in the future, when we're all more digitalized virtually, we will have our avatars, we will be able to relate within this metaverse, okay? And now, in order to come to that future metaverse, that there were two different technologies, virtual reality on the one hand, or augmented reality. Virtual reality is the one where we wear these special glasses, virtual reality glasses, and through the glasses, we go into a virtual world. Everything that surrounds us is virtual. And then we get completely isolated from the rest. Augmented reality uses a mobile phone, and what we do is add layers of reality, graphic element over the physical reality that we see at that precise moment. So these are the two different ways that we could use now for that metaverse future, or to create digital content in the tourist sector using these two elements. As I was saying, in order to get into the virtual reality world, we need some glasses. And for augmented reality, we can use a mobile phone or glasses such as the ones that are coming into the market and will be coming into the market, which are these that you can walk down the street. And they help us guide us to a destination, provide information about a monument, the time, all the information that we can see on our phone will appear on these glasses. So these are glasses that are still in the process of being developed. They're still a project, and they're not available in the market, but we have it with this reality, and we can have them on our phones. I will be talking about examples of virtual reality, which is what we've done significantly, where we've concentrated in the last few years. And now you wear these special glasses and you get isolated from the rest, but you have all the attention personalized and focused on the product that you're watching. So there is nothing around you that can distract you from the function, and you're concentrated on the story. In this case, you can see an example of a project that we presented at the COP25 with the IDB, and where we see the hands, you can interact, and you had some cocoa sheets, and they provide you access to a whole set of videos that we had recorded in Brazil, which were shown at the COP. So here you have some pictures of these days in the city of Madrid, where together with the IDB team, we used the glasses resorting to people from all over the world. And so ever since we've begun with our activity in creating these virtual reality content, hopefully we could have had a camera next to us recording the reactions of people, because culture, religion, the social status, relations, they're always the same. We've seen excitement, fear, joy, but it is a technology that very quickly allows the spectator to feel that they're part of the story. It is no longer once upon a time. Now the story happens because we're there. And as creators, we must understand the strength and the power of this new means of communication, and we have to play with it. And as I was saying at the beginning, as creators of stories, as narrators, we have to understand the rules of the game and how this technology works. Because if we want to make the best of it, if we want to be successful telling stories, we must understand that the narration time, the way of telling the stories, that illumination, sound, how we bring the spectator into this changes. And if we understand this, then we will see that our stories do bring excitement, and people will not go through the impossible feeling of what is impossible. You were in Madrid and you could pick up the cocoa sheets and travel to different places in Brazil, and to see how, in this case, the IDB was helping to a sustainable development in agriculture. Now, let me show you a video. This is a summary of different projects. Everything was recorded in Video 360. And so these are projects of different sorts. You will be able to travel all over the world from your place, thanks to virtual reality, but transformed so that you can follow this.
Bueno, como podéis ver, en
As
estos
you were able to see on these videos, these images that cover most of Latin America or the Americas, Europe and Africa, and many of these videos, you will be there like never before. You will be with the Guernica just for you, with the Meninas at the Prado. You can be in the Aurora Borealis. So this is a technology that allows us to be teletransported, and for the spectators to be in the very center. You have a flamenco dancer who dances just for you. When you travel, it depends on when you go. There are a lot of people. But in this case, you will be able to go through moments and live through them. When you were there was bad weather, there were a lot of people, you were not feeling well, and this will never replace the trip. I think that we will never be able to substitute or replace a trip, but in the near future, this helps us get to know these destinations in a very different way, and it really helps us promote these sites. After this break, let me continue talking a little bit about what I was saying previously, the importance of knowing how to distribute the content and how to deliver these to the spectator. We can spend a lot of money in production and then, or not to spend that much, but what is the best way of doing it? Let's say that we have two different ways now available in the market so that you will be able to distribute the contents of Video 360 and in virtual reality, economic, and because almost everybody has a mobile phone and a good internet connection, so you can reproduce it through a web platform that does not need any technological development, but it is simply to publish it on a web. And something else is through platforms. Oculus is Meta that belongs to Facebook or Video Station, others that have already created galleries where we can publish as developers of content, and people then downloads them and follow the virtual reality phase. And in the case of the most common platforms for the distribute of content, the Video 360, virtual reality content, the easiest things would be through YouTube 360, where we publish the video at a certain cost, and then people can follow this on your phone. You can move it around, you can spin around the image, and you will be able to distribute this. The same thing happens with Facebook or Vimeo. We can share content for free and in a very simple way. But obviously, the best way of seeing these is with virtual reality glasses. Here we have 4 examples: Oculus Gallery, called the Meta, which is part of Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp, etc. And it is the company that is betting on the world of virtual reality. In fact, this is when Mark Zuckerberg spoke of metaverse, when he started using this, the most searched word on the internet. And everybody is like the word in vogue, in fashion, that is in everybody's mouth. And then we have a Steam VR for the distribution of games, where we can download and publish the virtual reality content, PlayStation VR, Windows Mixed Reality, where we can publish the VR content. These are the best platforms because the projects are published with more quality. People have glasses, headphones in order to hear the sound. You can see the depth of the image. You can take 100% advantage of the production that is provided, the quality that we wanted, where you can enjoy this best is with the glasses, but not everybody has VR glasses. So what we have to do is for our projects to be as much as possible disseminated as much as we can. We can have a project that can be published in a platform such as Oculus, Meta, or PlayStation, and at the same time to have it on YouTube. We have to take this into account, and that it can be done in 2 different ways. And now let me quickly go into some examples, outstanding examples that we have: Video 360 and virtual reality. In this project, some will be acquainted with it. It is a project that is available for download in platforms such as Apple Store and Google Play. And that was done with the help of the Ministry of Culture and Aids for Innovation in Spain. And little by little, we brought in different public administration, Paradores, Segitur, the government of La Rioja, the government of Navarra, and willingly and with a lot of determination and very resolutely, we followed the Camino de Santiago. It was the first project that was done of this sort all over the world that received several awards, and that we were able to position in the world as a company to be used as a benchmark for this product. And we're very proud of this. Now, this is a project that has been in existence for 6-7 years. And if we had to do it now, it would be done with different cameras because it has evolved significantly. But it still allows us to enjoy this. And most of all are the comments that we get during the pandemic. This was magical for us over the pandemic to be able to receive comments from many people that had planned on going to Spain and follow the Camino de Santiago, and they were not able to do it because they couldn't travel. And people remembered, or they simply desired to go back to traveling. So this was one of the best things that was brought by this platform from a business point of view, from the point of view of positioning. But in this case, as storytellers, as narrator, we decided to use 2 pilgrims, an actress, she's a fan, a US actress, and plays a role of an architect and a Spanish gastronomer. They meet along the way and they follow the path together. So through this activity, we have different scenes in each chapter when you can select what sort of path you wanted to follow, and thus be able to have one personalized path. If you like gastronomy, then you prefer to go to a restaurant first. If you like architecture, then you can see that, follow it accordingly. So we offer different stories, different experiences adapted to the taste of each spectator. Cesar, you have a few minutes left. Well, in this case, you can see within the app, if you download it, you see interactive maps with pop context that show information about the project. And inside the page, we had links to hotel reservations and more information, the sponsors. And so within the story, we can bring in a lot of interactivity in order to provide more content to the story. So you see how the app works.
Puedes elegir tu propio camino, decidiendo si me acompañas a mí o a Antonio, pulsando sobre uno de esos iconos que aparecerán en la imagen.
Y pulsando sobre ellos podrás acceder a vídeos en HD, fotos y mucha más información.
Toda esta información está dentro de la
All this
aplicación.
information is within the app. It's not a linear video, but we add much more interactivity and contents for the people to be able to enjoy this and then to create your own path. By way of quick examples that I can share with you, Paradores, the Spanish chain, these inns that are managed by the state. We have several examples with it. You can discover different paradores or inns, Spanish inns, and you can select the parador that you wanted to go to. For the Ministry of Tourism of Morocco, we went through all the cities, historic cities in the country, and where we blended gastronomy with the cities that were heritage, mankind heritage. For Alhambra, we went around the Alhambra for beers, and brands use tourism in order to promote their products. For Movistar, we went to the World Ski Championship, and so you can ski on the snows, the highlands, and virtual reality allows us to do a lot of things that you can otherwise not do. And with some other projects of those that we did with the IDB, this one concretely in Haiti, virtual reality in Haiti, or the Panama Canal. This was the first project that we did with the IDB, where you could fly over the canal, the new dams at the gates, the floodgates. And I wanted to tell you about tourism, culture, theater. We can travel to the city and to get into the mind of Miguel de Cervantes and also to select what part of the story we wanted to see. We had actors in these places, and there you go to the main scene and you get to know how the writing of El Quijote was done. And last but not least, the project that we're developing for the City Hall of Madrid, and we're starting to use this for tourist information points. This is an experience where together with three different couples, profiles, one is a marriage, the other one is a group of Chinese tourists and some friends. We will be going through Madrid as you selected. You will be able to choose. And here you can see how we create the narrative, how we start in one place, we go to the next one, and we provide the option if you want to go to Sorolla, to El Prado, or somewhere else. And each one of these will be enjoyed differently. We have different scenes, and all of this is created to appear on a web page and with virtual reality glasses and take you to the points of interest. And we will soon publish this in Meta in an Oculus gallery. And I wanted to show you this because it is important for you to see it. It is the use of photogrammetry. In this case, what we did is to scan, and we digitally recreated several spaces of the city of Madrid, in this case at the Sorolla Museum, and we have the El Prado Museum and the Royal Palace, and with the virtual reality glasses, besides a video 360 physically and virtually, you can move around within and inside these spaces. And here you will be able to see how this works.
Este proyecto,
This project, we can virtually fly over the El Prado, the Central Gallery. All of this is recreated on the basis of photographs, and people can virtually move around. You can go around the sculpture, you can kneel down to touch something that never ever you will be able to do in a museum. This is something that you can do with virtual reality. This project has not been published by the City Hall of Madrid. And this is another way of traveling. You can just imagine a museum on to yourselves. We've dreamt of this. Sometimes you can do this by paying extraordinary amounts of money, but in this case, you have the whole museum to yourself.
y nada, lo último, pues esto, hablando un poco.
And the last thing, talking about the metaverse, which is this that I told you at the beginning of the talk, that doesn't exist, but we're on the way to have it as part of our future. We will be able to travel differently to becoming avatars, virtual characters, where we will be able to go to a museum on our own and to visit that together with our friends. Each one at home, you can wear the glasses to come into the museum, interact with the objects, open up a book, sit on your bed to talk and to have a virtual view different from what we've had so far. I left something out, but we're running out of time. Yes, so we're running out of time. So this is the end of it. Thank you very much for everything you've showed us. The images obviously speak louder than words. And in the case of virtual reality, this is obvious. Let us now move on to the Q&A. We've come to the end of the 5 presentations that we had planned for today. And before we go on to the questions, let me give the floor to Nuria and to simply talk about something that came up in the chat. No, we haven't censored any questions, any comments that you've made on the chat. I just wanted to clarify this. There's no censorship. This is simply a knowledge webinar, and we don't have any censorship. We don't want to censor anything. We're trying to share knowledge with experts on this score, and this is what we will continue to do. Nuria, if you're kind enough, let us now go to the questions that have been included all throughout the webinar. So good afternoon. Well, the first question would be for Norberto. How do you get to know the maximum number of tourists that you can have without having a serious impact on that site? Well, that specifically depends on each destination and how much they estimate there would be the maximum number that would be the right number for their destination. What we do is to measure that capacity to give the parameters to those destinations. And with those numbers, they have to conduct their estimates and decide what's best for them.
The next one is for Barkix. What is the cost of hiring your company services to create a destination gateway platform for Teneo Ojere? Well, the destination gateway platform is already up and running. It's a service that works on a subscription model, and it's divided into different modules. And I haven't really discussed them to not put in too many plugs for our company or for the tool, but depending on these different elements and different applications, you could use a connectivity model, recovery or marketing modules. And we're talking about contracts that can start at 10, 15,000 euros, but you need to specify depending on the number of destinations or markets that you're looking to analyze. Additionally, if you wanted to compare your destination to a competitive destination, we could update the data and look at it from a very detailed perspective. So what is the Gymkhana Turística monetization model? Well, these routes are digitally implemented as destinations for users, and the local government will have a password available to access the Gymkhana platform. And you could look at different types of data points, the most heavily used routes, the most heavily flowing time frames, or if one tourist route has, say, for example, 15 enigmas, they could see how far users actually got through that route. And depending on the number of sites visited, if it's a low number because of the complexity of the route or what have you, that's something that can be adjusted accordingly. But that's the kind of data that users can access and subsequently monetize in their own way. The next question would be from Francis Yakima, and it's for everyone in general, though more concretely those who do data management. How do you ensure that data provided by travelers or tourists are not shared? On our case, Forward Keys, all the data is anonymous. We don't ask for any specific identification data when we deal with a traveler. We don't ask the nationality or the gender. What we're trying primarily to do is understand a traveler that has a certain residence, and we try to use that as a proxy to determine their place of residence. But the rest of the travel cycle is done completely anonymously. We also have other data sources, other data providers, as I mentioned at the beginning of my presentation. These are completely randomized, anonymous data, and there's no way for any one single person to be identified. The last question related to data is, how do these companies buy these data sets like Forward and Atribus? Well, I can answer both questions. We both work with data that we obtained via social media. Each channel has their own privacy policies, and we need to be in full compliance with these policies on social media. And that's what we work with. Thank you very much. Next question also is geared towards Atribus, but it can be answered by anybody else. In case of a tourist manifesting a bad experience, what can the technology do to make amends or to mitigate that? Well, we work with various solutions, especially related to destination and brand reputation. So we work very closely with these brands uh, with regard to negative reputational impacts. And so based on the information that we have, we can see what negative experiences are being felt by tourism. And we look at the satisfaction levels for every destination. There may be something affecting this. With this satisfaction index analysis, we also see very frequently the security or safety issue. If somebody travels to a destination and they had some sort of a bad experience related to public safety, this could get out in social media, and that could engender a reputational impact to the location, the destination, or even the brands that are involved. The last question is for all of you, though I think it would be more appropriate for Cesar or Jesus, who have not as of yet ventured any responses. How can you implement these tools to attract more tourists?
Pues nosotros, nuestra experiencia es,
Well, our experience
por ejemplo, se está usando en los puntos
has
de
been that if we're using different information points from city halls, autonomous communities, and destinations, then we use virtual networks, so virtual reality routes for people to learn more about the destinations. There are more and more users of these VR solutions, and many people have headsets, and they could be very helpful in promoting different tourism locations and destinations. In our case, you could use our platform in any environment. We could also adapt to any channel. It could be a simple web channel to more sophisticated platforms. And one last question that just came in relates to Cesar from Hidalgo Verre. How do you consider incentivizing travel when more than 60% of people don't have the intent of traveling, given that many of their destinations that they were thinking about traveling to are not available? I don't think that we would be disincentivizing travel to these destinations. They're just experiencing them in a virtual reality format. I mean, we've been in Greece and we've been in the Louvre, and we were able to see a lot of people trying to take pictures with their mobile phone, but with a virtual reality tool, that's never going to be a replacement for the real thing. It won't replace the experience of actually eating a local dish or feeling that sensation of riding on a boat in the Mediterranean. I think it's just something that provides information, and the information can, if anything, incentivize people to travel to the real place. Well, I think we don't have any more questions, or actually we do have one more, and we will have to answer it on Thursday because it asks, how can you use these strategies to undertake a sustainable project? So we will pose this question to our presenters on Thursday. I wanted to remind everybody to join us on Thursday. I want to thank all of our distinguished guest speakers today. Thank you for everything that you've shared, all the information that you've provided. I think it's been very, very useful. To all of the participants who joined us today, we want to thank you for attending today's webinar. We hope you thought it was worthwhile. In the next few hours, you will have access to the videos of the sessions, all the materials and presentations that were shared in the Turismo Future Tourism page of the IDB. You can access that by clicking on the sectors page and then sustainable development page. And then you can also go to the Segitur website and access all the information through the blog page or the sustainable development site on Segitur. Again, we have the second installment of this event on Thursday at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. I cannot detail the specific times for all of the countries from which people will be joining us, but it will be at the same exact time that we began our webinar today. That's going to be another knowledge session related to technicals or technological solutions to drive sustainable development for all of these tourism destinations. So with nothing further, I wanted to thank everybody for joining us today. We hope you'll join us on Thursday, but we thank you for sharing this time with us and hope to see you on Thursday. Thank you.